You this live special report from ABC News.
This is an ABC News special report. President Reagan responds. Now reporting from New York, Peter Jennings.
Good evening. There are probably many things one could say about the substance of the president's speech tonight, even before he gives it in a moment. But it's probably better wait until we hear what he has to say. It is true that all across the country, but especially in Washington, people are anxious to see how Mr. Reagan will use this unusual moment in his presidency. Mr. Reagan told us last week he would study the Tower Commission report, which said he hadn't really been on the job, and therefore the Iran scandal, and then he would react. And that's what he intends this evening. And when he is finished, we'll try to get some sense of his impact, hearing from, among others, former Senator Tower, who was chairman of the President's Commission. The President is going to be speaking from the Oval Office.
My fellow Americans, I've spoken to you from this historic office on many occasions and about many things. The power of the presidency is often thought to reside within this Oval Office, yet it doesn't rest here. It rests in you, the American people, and in your trust. Your trust is what gives a president his powers of leadership and his personal strength, and it's what I want to talk to you about this evening. For the past 3 months, I've been silent on the revelations about Iran. And you must have been thinking, well, why doesn't he tell us what's happening? Why doesn't he just speak to us as he has in the past when we've faced troubles or tragedies? Others of you, I guess, were thinking, what's he doing hiding out in the White House? Well, the reason I haven't spoken to you before now is this. You deserve the truth, and as frustrating as the waiting has been, I felt it was improper to come to you with sketchy reports or possibly even erroneous statements, which would then have to be corrected, creating even more doubt and confusion. There's been enough of that. I paid a price for my silence in terms of your trust and confidence, but I've had to wait, as you have, for the complete story. That's why I appointed Ambassador David Abshire as my special counselor to help get out the thousands of documents to the various investigations. And I appointed a special review board, the Tower Board, which took on the chore of pulling the truth together for me and getting to the bottom of things. It has now issued its findings. I'm often accused of being an optimist, and it's true. I had to hunt pretty hard to find any good news in the board's report. As you know, it's well stocked with criticisms, which I'll discuss in a moment, but I was very relieved to read this sentence. The board is convinced that the president does indeed want the full story to be told. And that will continue to be my pledge to you as the other investigations go forward. I want to thank the members of the panel, former Senator John Tower, former Secretary of State Edmund Muskie, and former National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft. They have done the nation, as well as me personally, a great service by submitting a report of such integrity and depth. They have my genuine and enduring gratitude. I've studied the board's report. Its findings are honest, convincing, and highly critical, and I accept them. And tonight, I want to share with you my thoughts on these findings and report to you on the actions I'm taking to implement the board's recommendations. First, let me say I take full responsibility for my own actions and for those of my administration. As angry as I may be about activities undertaken without my knowledge, I am still accountable for those activities. As disappointed as I may be in some who served me, I am still the one who must answer to the American people for this behavior. And as personally distasteful as I find secret bank accounts and diverted funds, well, as the Navy would say, this happened on my watch. Let's start with the part that is the most controversial. A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not. As the Tower Board reported, what began as a strategic opening to Iran deteriorated in its implementation into trading arms for hostages. This runs counter to my own beliefs, to administration policy, and to the original strategy we had in mind. There are reasons why it happened, but no excuses. It was a mistake. I undertook the original Iran initiative in order to develop relations with those who might assume leadership in a post-Khomeini government. It's clear from the board's report, however, that I let my personal concern for the hostages spill over into the geopolitical strategy of reaching out to Iran. I asked so many questions about the hostages' welfare that I didn't ask enough about the specifics of the total Iran plan. Let me say to the hostage families, we have not given up. We never will. And I promise you we'll use every legitimate means to free your loved ones from captivity. But I must also caution that those Americans who freely remain in such dangerous areas must know that they're responsible for their own safety. Now, another major aspect of the board's findings regards the transfer of funds to the Nicaraguan Contras. The Tower Board wasn't able to find out what happened to this money. So the facts here will be left to the continuing investigations of the court-appointed independent counsel and the 2 congressional investigating committees. I'm confident the truth will come out about this matter as well. As I told the Tower Board, I didn't know about any diversion of funds to the Contras, but as president, I cannot escape responsibility. Much has been said about my management style, a style that's worked successfully for me during 8 years as governor of California and for most of my presidency. The way I work is to identify the problem, find the right individuals to do the job, and then let them go to it. I've found this invariably brings out the best in people. They seem to rise to their full capability, and in the long run, you get more done. When it came to managing the NSC staff, let's face it, my style didn't match its previous track record. I've already begun correcting this. As a start, yesterday I met with the entire professional staff of the National Security Council. I defined for them the values I want to guide the national security policies of this country. I told them that I wanted a policy that was as justifiable and understandable in public as it was in secret. I wanted a policy that reflected the will of the Congress as well as of the White House. And I told them that there will be no more freelancing by individuals when it comes to our national security. You've heard a lot about the staff of the National Security Council in recent months. Well, I can tell you they are good and dedicated government employees who put in long hours for the nation's benefit. They are eager and anxious to serve their country. One thing still upsetting me, however, is that no one kept proper records of meetings or decisions. This led to my failure to recollect whether I approved an arms shipment before or after the fact. I did approve it. I just can't say specifically when. Well, rest assured, there's plenty of record keeping now going on at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. For nearly a week now, I've been studying the board's report. I want the American people to know that this wrenching ordeal of recent months has not been in vain. I endorse every one of the Tower Board's recommendations. In fact, I'm going beyond its recommendations so as to put the House in even better order. I'm taking action in 3 basic areas: personnel, national security policy, and the process for making sure that the system works. First, personnel. I've brought in an accomplished and highly respected new team here at the White House. They bring new blood, new energy, and new credibility and experience. Former Senator Howard Baker, my new chief of staff, possesses a breadth of legislative and foreign affairs skills that's impossible to match. I'm hopeful that his experience as minority and majority leader of the Senate can help us forge a new partnership with the Congress, especially on foreign and national security policies. I'm genuinely honored that he's given up his own presidential aspirations to serve the country as my chief of staff. Frank Carlucci, my new national security advisor, is respected for his experience in government and trusted for his judgment and counsel. Under him, the NSC staff is being rebuilt with proper management discipline. Already, almost half the NSC professional staff is comprised of new people. Yesterday, I nominated William Webster, a man of sterling reputation, to be director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Mr. Webster has served as director of the FBI and as a U.S. District Court judge. He understands the meaning of rule of law. So that his knowledge of national security matters can be available to me on a continuing basis, I will also appoint John Tower to serve as a member of my Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. I am considering other changes in personnel, and I'll move more furniture as I see fit in the weeks and months ahead. Second, in the area of national security policy, I have ordered the NSC to begin a comprehensive review of all covert operations. I have also directed that any covert activity be in support of clear policy objectives and in compliance with American values. I expect a covert policy that if Americans saw it on the front page of their newspaper, they'd say, that makes sense. I have had issued a directive prohibiting the NSC staff itself from undertaking covert operations. No ifs, ands, or buts. I have asked Vice President Bush to reconvene his task force on terrorism to review our terrorist policy in light of the events that have occurred. Third, in terms of the process of reaching national security decisions, I am adopting in total the Tower Report's model of how the NSC process and staff should work. I am directing Mr. Carlucci to take the necessary steps to make that happen. He will report back to me on further reforms that might be needed. I've created the post of NSC legal advisor to assure a greater sensitivity to matters of law. I am also determined to make the congressional oversight process work. Proper procedures for consultation with the Congress will be followed not only in letter, but in spirit. Before the end of March, I will report to the Congress on all the steps I've taken in line with the Tower Board's conclusions. Now, what should happen when you make a mistake is this. You take your knocks, you learn your lessons, and then you move on. That's the healthiest way to deal with a problem. This in no way diminishes the importance of the other continuing investigations, but the business of our country and our people must proceed. I've gotten this message from Republicans and Democrats in Congress, from allies around the world, and if we're reading the signals right, even from the Soviets. And of course, I've heard the message from you, the American people. You know, by the time you reach my age, you've made plenty of mistakes. And if you've lived your life properly, so you learn. You put things in perspective. You pull your energies together, you change, you go forward. My fellow Americans, I have a great deal that I want to accomplish with you and for you over the next 2 years. And the Lord willing, that's exactly what I intend to do. Good night, and God bless you.
President Reagan, a speech of about 12 minutes speaking from the Oval Office, his response to the recommendations of the Tower Commission report, which were issued last week. And how has it played, to put it rather simply? Let us go first to Texas, where Senator John Tower, former Senator Tower, who was the chairman of the Tower Commission, has been listening to the speech with us. Senator, it was your report the president was responding to. He accepted all your recommendations, as best we can tell. Are you encouraged?
Yes, I am, very much so. You know, I think a man is never more credible than when he admits to a mistake. And this the president has very manfully done tonight, and in putting his stamp of approval and his imprimatur, literally, on a very critical report. And by taking the actions that he's taken over the past few days and weeks and is expected to take, I think he's turned things around.
How much has he turned them around, Senator?
Well, that remains to be seen. And of course, I have no way of knowing what the public reaction to the president's remarks tonight will be. But I'm reasonably sure that the public reaction will be favorable.
You live outside Washington, but you have a keen political sense of not only your own neck of the woods, but Washington. How much can you really accomplish with one speech?
Well, I think you can accomplish a great deal, because the fact was that that people wanted the president to give some sort of explanation or comment on what had gone on. They were not satisfied, obviously, with the explanations that were given back in November. I think the president has done it in the right way. He's waited until all the facts were in, and now he said that he made a mistake. And I think the American people admired that, especially from a president. You rarely hear presidents of the United States confess mistake to the extent that Ronald Reagan has tonight.
In fact, Senator, we were sitting here wondering whether a sitting president had ever made this kind of speech before. You've got a much longer political memory than most of us. What do you think?
No, and I think that some presidents that have gone before have made foreign policy mistakes of much greater consequence than the one that Ronald Reagan has made. But usually that's left to the judgment of history. And you don't ordinarily have sitting presidents confess to error like that.
I would like you to use a little hindsight, if you don't mind. At the very beginning of the speech, the president says the reason he hasn't spoken to us before is because it would have been confusing, that there were sketchy reports or possibly even erroneous statements which would have led to confusion. Well, isn't it true that back in November particularly, the president made many of those erroneous statements and confusing ones himself?
I don't think the president said anything that he didn't honestly believe. I believe he might have convinced himself that some things were right that were actually wrong. But in fact, I don't think the president willfully misled the American people. And I think he was probably wise to bring in 3 outsiders to try to get all the facts out. If this had all been done internally in the White House and they'd come out with facts on the Iran-Contra affair, I don't think it would have been nearly as credible as it was when 3 outsiders were appointed to do it, to get all the facts out and let the president examine them and comment on it.
Speaking of outsiders, the president said he's going to appoint you to serve as a member of his Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was aware. They asked me, the president asked me yesterday if I would accept that appointment. As a matter of fact, there's a vacancy created by the departure of Howard Baker from that advisory board, and I'm filling that vacancy.
In other words, we assume you accept.
Yes, I have accepted.
What else might you have liked to hear the president say this evening?
I think he pretty well said it all. I think he may have even gone beyond what I would have liked to hear him say, and I think it was really a brilliant presentation, and I think he said all the right things.
Well, Senator Tower, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it. It's an honor. As we said, it was the Tower Commission's report, to which the president, of course, has been responding this evening. And we use the phrase, how is it going to play? One of the groups, the group in many respects, that the president has wanted to impress tonight has been the Congress. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, the Senate Minority Leader Robert Dole. Senator Dole, an initial reaction from you as to what you thought of the speech.
I think the president did a good job with a very, very, very tough subject.
Can you be more specific? How well did he do, and how tough a subject does it remain?
Well, he used the word mistake, saying that he made a mistake about 3 times. The word accept responsibility, accountability. I mean, the speech is filled with references to the fact that the president has fully accepted responsibility. It was his mistake in many areas, and that will go a long way. There's another little sentence in there that's going to please Congress, and that's when he said he was going to consult with Congress in letter and in spirit. That will go a long way toward, I think, soothing some of the feelings in Congress in both parties that the president hasn't given us timely notice or consultation.
Senator, you know that speeches can create highs and they can create lows. This appears to be certainly much more of a high. How long do these highs last?
Well, this could last, I think, for some time. I think some would say, well, he should have gone ahead and said Congress ought to go to work. I think tonight the president decided to spend every moment of this speech confessing to the American people that it didn't work, and that he accepted that responsibility. And I think the American people will respond favorably. This isn't behind him yet, but it's a start.
Well, that's my next question. Having observed that it's an excellent speech, can the Reagan presidency nonetheless ever be the same again?
Oh, I hope so, and I think so. It's up to many of us in positions of leadership now to get behind the president. Certainly Howard Baker will help, Frank Carlucci, all the people the president named. But in the final analysis, the American people are looking to the president. Now, he's taken the first big step along that comeback trail tonight. There's a long way to go, but I have confidence that Ronald Reagan can do it.
Well, again, I'm going to ask you how far there is to go. Tell us about the impact on the president's legislative package on the Hill.
I don't think that's been tested. We haven't had much of an opportunity, but I would say this. The next time the president vetoes a bill, we better be able to sustain that veto, or someone's going to say, well, the president, after all that speech, the first thing he sent to the Hill, the first veto, was overridden by the Congress. So I would guess the White House is on notice. Howard Baker, the new chief of staff, the president, the others who helped the president are on notice that, you know, we've still got a lot of work to do, but I think most Democrats and Republicans want Ronald Reagan to succeed. Certainly we do. I think the American people do.
It is interesting, Senator, that the Democratic leadership wasn't particularly keen to talk on television tonight. Having said that, let me point out to you that you've been saying for weeks how appalled you are by this whole affair. And you really do appear to have been turned by this speech.
I think there have been colossal blunders, and I think tonight the president has reached the same judgment that many of us reached weeks and weeks ago. There's nothing dramatic the president can do now that will sort of wipe this off the front pages. But I do believe that by going to the American people, laying it on the line, saying we've all made mistakes, I made a mistake, I didn't that we didn't keep records. Maybe my style didn't work in this case. I think he said just about everything the American people could expect. Some wanted an apology. My own view was that he shouldn't have gone that far. He didn't. So I think he's back on track.
Can I just ask you one more legislative question? If the president comes back to the Hill, as he undoubtedly will at some point, to ask for money for the Contras in Nicaragua, is he going to get it?
Be very close. I think he ought to come to the Hill as quickly as he can for that request. But you know, it's hanging in the balance. I would say right now it's a little less than 50-50.
Okay, Senator Dole, it's a speech you like. It's a speech. Do you agree with Senator Tower, the speech he should have made last fall?
This should have been done. Yes, you know, hindsight's perfect in our business, and most of us practice it. But having that advantage, yes, this would have been a great speech for, let's say, the night before Thanksgiving last year.
Thank you very much for joining us, Senator Robert Dole, the minority leader in the Senate. Let's stay on Capitol Hill for a second now and talk to our ABC Britt Hume. Britt, you heard the senator. You've had a chance in the last few days to talk to lots of senators and congressmen. Is Senator Dole right about how it's going to play?
Peter, I think this is likely to be well received here. People have been asking for the president to admit he made a mistake. He has done that. They've been asking for him to institute new processes in the White House to change the atmosphere down there. He has certainly done that by no one step more than by the appointment of Howard Baker, who came through here today and put on a rather dazzling show doing some courtesy calls. So he's on the right track, I think, as far as Capitol Hill is concerned. But, of course, he's got investigations going forward up here, which will go far more deeply than the Tower Board or any of the other inquiries so far have been able to do into the matter of the Contras and the diversion of funds. And, of course, there are dangers there about possible disclosures that might be damaging or possible things that were not told. So he's not quite off the hook.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because we want to talk to Bob Zelnick about the ongoing investigations. But who's the Hill more impressed with at the moment, Ronald Reagan or Howard Baker?
Well, it's hard to say. I think, obviously, Senator Baker, who is, as I've said to you in the past, Peter, almost beloved here, is a very welcome visitor up here. People like him. However, I have to say this about it. I think that the Baker appointment was so good that I think that some of the Democrats up here who were really privately glad to see the president reeling are a little concerned about it. It was very significant that yesterday, Jim Wright, the Speaker of the House, issued a very tough statement accusing the president and others in the administration of breaking laws and enumerating what the laws were. I don't think that in an important respect, these Democrats want to see the president make a comeback, because he's got them, believe it or not, over a barrel on a number of issues, not least of them the budget. He has a budget that would get the deficit down as far as it's supposed to go. They don't yet, and he's in a strong position even now on a number of issues. They don't want to see him bounce back.
Okay, Britt, thanks very much. Britt Hume, who covers Capitol Hill. And now let's go to Bob Zelnick, who covers national security affairs for us and has been covering the Tower Commission. Bob, this speech does leave undone, for all of the applause it appears to be getting, does leave undone some matters of the investigation. Sketch them out for us.
You're absolutely right about that, Peter, and most of them involve the Contra effort run from the White House by Oliver North and his superiors. It's noteworthy that the Tower report states by the fall 1985, Lieutenant Colonel North was actively engaged in private efforts to resupply the Contras with lethal equipment. Now, these efforts took several forms: private fundraising, an air supply operation run in Central America, fundraising from foreign countries, and eventually the diversion of some funds from the Iran weapons sales. This was memorialized in a memo from North to Poindexter intended for presidential signature. So one of the questions that investigators will want to know is, was the president aware of Oliver North's efforts to raise funds for the Contras? A second question is...
Can I interrupt you for a second, Robert? Because if I recall, I haven't read the whole speech at this point again, the president did say, did he not, that he did not know of the diversion to the Contras this evening?
Well, that's absolutely true. The president's memory, however, has failed on a number of important points and on a number of occasions. And in this case, unlike some of the others, the commission did not get an opportunity to interview some of the principals like Poindexter, North, Secord, the general who was running the Latin American operation. So the question is, how much did the president know about that? Did the North memo reach his desk? And later, when aides misled the Congress, did he know about that?
Okay, Bob, thanks very much. As you point out, more investigations yet to come. Let's conclude this slight review by talking to our man at the White House, Sam Donaldson. Sam, you know the president better than most. You watch him more closely than most. First, give us your assessment of the speech.
Well, Peter, what the president has done tonight is say to the country, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I was selling arms for hostages until the Tower Commission told me so. Now I'm happy to say that that policy is a mistake. He did not say in his speech that he had made any mistake in instituting the policy. But in fact, Peter, the evidence to date shows that it was an arms for hostage trade from the very beginning. From August and September of 1985, when the Israeli first shipments went, it was arms for hostages. Reverend Benjamin Weir came out in September of '85, and the evidence is that the president knew it. Now tonight, the president, I find, has made a new determination as to why he can't remember whether he approved that shipment in advance. He says records weren't kept, and he wished records had been kept. But Peter, we're not talking about whether he approved it on a Wednesday or a Thursday or the first or the second week in August. We're talking about whether he approved it in advance or, as some have testified, his chief of staff now, months later.
Sam, isn't the point here in part the fact that the Tower Commission never did specifically say that it was an arms for hostages deal? It said it degenerated into that, so therefore the president didn't have to go any farther.
Well, if you say that the president didn't have to go any farther because he read the Tower Commission and very carefully subscribed to what they said, then the question still arises, what does he remember and what was his policy? I think it's an effective speech from the standpoint of the rhetoric, but when people look at what he said tonight, he has not gone to the point of answering the questions. Were you trading arms for hostages? He says the Tower Commission says he was. He has to accept it. But he hasn't told us whether he thinks he was, except to say that he still thinks he wasn't.
Sam, let me ask you a couple of other broader questions about the president because you watch it so closely. There's been much ado in the last couple of days about the president running the show. Is Ronald Reagan ever going to be, as he's been urged to be by his closest friends, a hands-on president?
Well, it's not in his style. He said tonight his management style hadn't served him that well with the NSC staff, but he didn't say he was going to change it. I think Ronald Reagan at 76, with a lifetime of passivity from the standpoint of letting others do the work, is hardly going to come into the Oval Office at 7:30 every morning, stay till 7:30 every night, and be a hands-on president. I think Howard Baker, his new chief of staff, will have to organize that along with Frank Carlucci. But they may do that very well.
But as the president did point out in his speech tonight, it is a style that has worked for him through the governorship of California and for much of his presidency, right?
Well, that's true, but I think at this point the American public wants to know whether the president himself, Ronald Reagan, not Howard Baker, is going to actively run this government. There have even been these snide pieces in the paper that it's Nancy Reagan that's running the government. He doesn't like to hear that, as he told us today.
Let me ask you just a little more about that, because there have been a great many pieces in the press about Mrs. Reagan. The president was really quite outraged when it was brought up to him today.
Yes, he was. He loves his wife. She loves him. They protect each other. And he said that anyone who would call her a dragon lady, well, someone said to him, Helen Thomas, but it was your own chief of staff, Senator Baker, who had said that. Baker hadn't called Mrs. Reagan a dragon lady. He had said that when she gets her hackles up, she can be a dragon. So everyone smiled and laughed, but the point was made.
Okay, that is Helen Thomas. I note behind you, Sam. Thank you very much for joining us. And good night to you at the White House, and good night to those of you at home. A speech which, on balance at least, hearing from our correspondents and a couple of politicians, has been well received. But as everybody has pointed out, how you receive it in various corners of the country is very important, not only to the entire political process, but clearly to the president. There'll be more on Nightline this evening, and obviously more on World News tonight, tomorrow. I'm Peter Jennings. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News.
Tonight at 9, is there an imposter in the family claiming to be Adam Carrington? Don't miss Dynasty. Then it's a bittersweet high school reunion for Christine when a class hero makes a play for her on Hotel.